The brand new German Battlecruiser line is in early access for World of Warships Legends, and the only one that I have fully upgraded is the Tier 7 Zieten, which is actually quite a good ship, despite all my sarcastic remarks during my past couple of streams that it is a terrible ship. It's actually very good, you just have to play it correctly. And playing it correctly involves not treating this ship, or really any of the ships in this new alternate German battleship line, like they are battleships. There's a reason they're called battle cruisers, and this line, more than any other kind of battle cruiser we have in the game right now, really leans into the cruiser part of that designation much more so than it does the battleships. For example, we already have some German battle cruisers in the game, some old ships, think the Scharnhorst and Gneisenau. Technically, you could call either of those two ships battle cruisers, but they are armored, much more like battleships. That is not the case for this new line of German battle cruisers, and it's certainly not the case for the Zieten. There's some things that set this line apart from the main line of German battleships that we all know and have grown to love over the years. You saw a little bit of it in action there against this Hipper. I find that the guns on the Zieten are, for the most part, fairly accurate. They certainly feel more accurate than, say, the guns on the Bismarck. They're also bigger than the Bismarck's guns in that they are 16-inch guns, and the Zieten has 6 of them. Low number of guns, yes, and they are still German guns, so when I say they're accurate, it doesn't mean they are as accurate as guns you'd find on something like an American battleship, say, or a British battleship, but certainly more consistent and reliable than the main guns. At the same time, it is really not the guns that is going to do the lion's share of damage for you, because the Zieten, and this entire line in particular, also has long-range secondaries and fairly long-range torpedoes. I can get the secondaries ranging out to 11.4 kilometers by sea, and the torpedoes extend to 7.5 kilometers, although they are exceptionally slow, with a top speed of 56 knots, so really you'll probably want to use them more in brawling situations, and this German battle cruiser line is a fairly brawly line. You simply can't push it in as aggressively as the main line of German battleships. No, and I think that is where most people are having some problems, because I get the sense that the wider community thus far has not yet quite realized how to most effectively play these lines, and that's essentially what I'm here to tell you today. I grinded this entire line on PC well before it came to World of Warships Legends, so I'm pretty familiar with it, and you definitely have to approach playing it very differently than you would any other type of battleship. These battleships are unlike any that are in the game right now. They are a completely unique experience. One of the things that sets them apart is the fact that all up and down the line, the bow and stern plating on these ships are overmatchable. The Zieten, for its part, has a 27mm bow plate on its bow and a 27mm plate on its stern. It does have a pretty nice icebreaker along the bow that should prevent it from getting citadeled straight through the bow by 16-inch guns, but of course anything with 406mm guns or larger is perfectly capable of going right through the upper bow armor on the Zieten. And more so than that, the Zieten only has one gun on its bow, or one turret rather, 2 guns technically, but not a lot of firepower there. So that should be your first clue that this particular battleship, and the line in general, is not a line that you can use to bow tank and be safe. If you try to bow tank in this line, you're going to get overmatched a lot by battleship guns at the same tier, and it's just not going to work out for you. That being said, the casemate armor and the citadel belt armor is perfectly fine for shattering any battleship shots that get sent your way. You just have to maintain angling. And most of the guns on the Zieten in particular are in the back. So what you want to do with this battlecruiser and pretty much the entire line is you want to find a place on the map where you can place your battlecruiser and the enemy team has to push into you to get to some sort of objective. You want to be close enough that your secondaries can do their work, because these are fantastic secondaries. They are pretty accurate. They're more accurate, I'd say, than the main line of German battleships, and they have increased penetration. I was talking to Prince Blip, one of the community managers, after this line got released, and he was able to confirm to me that the 150mm secondaries on the new German battlecruiser line do get the proper quarter penetration on their high explosive shells, which means the 150s, the 150mm secondaries on the Zieten and every other ship in this line can penetrate 32mm of armor, which is significant. That means they're going to do more actual penetration damage when they land on the targets, more so than the other German secondaries on the main battleship line, which do not get that quarter penetration. The Zieten also has 105mm guns. Unfortunately, these do not get the quarter pen. They are not capable of penetrating as much armor as they should be able to, but they will penetrate the hulls of destroyers, probably some cruiser hulls, the more lightly armored ones, and of course superstructure. I think their actual pen is 21mm, and that's fine for penetrating superstructure and lighting fires. These secondaries, by the way, do tend to light a lot of fires. But in order to get the ship into a place where you can get these secondaries working, you're going to have to do a little bit of work yourself. First thing you're going to need to do, if you took a look at one of my more recent videos, it was entitled, and you'll have to forgive me for my language here, but it was entitled, "Move Your Fucking Battleship." And you're going to have to move these fucking battleships a lot. You're going to have to put them in places on the map where you don't have too much of a possibility of getting shot at in return by more than one ship at a time. And you're going to need to build into the concealment in order to make that happen. My recommendation on this line especially is that you always choose the concealment mod in the third module slot, and it's not a bad idea to put on Kondo as one of the inspirations for whichever German battleship commander you want to use. Personally, I have a rank 16 Kondo and a rank 16 Hipper as my two inspirations for the Zieten, and that gives me a 12-kilometer concealment range by sea and 11.4-kilometer range on my secondaries. The extra concealment, of course, makes it easier to move up further on the map without being spotted, which in turn should allow you to position a little bit better, get a little bit closer to the enemy before they see you, get turned around as well, because you certainly don't want to be facing the enemy bow in, not in a situation like this where we can see a Colorado and an Amagi. We've got our bows pointed away from these two ships. We are potatoing a little bit because, of course, we did not notice that island. Who keeps putting those there? I don't know. We ran into the island, though, and we've compromised our maneuverability. We cannot get out of this situation quickly, and by all rights, this is a terrible misplay on our part that should result in us taking a crap ton of damage, but does not, because apparently the enemy Colorado and the enemy Amagi do not care. In fact, we've hit the Colorado so hard with our main guns and our secondaries that he just can't stand up to the firepower anymore. He's taking himself around an island there as we light a fire with our secondaries on either him or the Amagi. Hard to tell, but the Amagi, for his part, is also giving us flat broadside. Guns are not quite reloaded. We're taking a look at the minimap, keeping track of the Synops position, because that Synop is going to be the biggest threat to us. You saw when we took some shells from the Colorado in our side armor there that, while he did get a little bit of chunk or chip damage, whatever you want to call it, the results for us were not catastrophic. The side armor on these German battlecruisers is perfectly fine for protecting yourself against battleship caliber guns. You just don't want to point your stern or your bow directly at any battleship with 16-inch guns or larger, and both the Amagi and Colorado have that. Otherwise, their shells are just going to go right through your bow or stern plating and deal penetration damage, if not hit your citadel directly. And another thing to remember is that while the citadel and upper belt armor on these German battlecruisers is fine for ricocheting battleship caliber AP, you do not enjoy the turtleback protection of the main line. So if you get broadside, or rather if you give broadside in these battlecruisers, you can expect to be reliably citadeled for a lot of your hit points, and the German battlecruisers don't have a lot of hit points to begin with, so you definitely want to avoid that. But this is the kind of situation you're looking for. You want to get into a place where you can kite away from the big guns as they push into you, and then you want to let your secondaries do the talking while still keeping your main guns firing, which you can do very, very quickly. Without the main gun reload module in the 4th slot, the Zieten has a reload time on 16-inch guns of 22.5 seconds, which you can correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I'm pretty sure that's the quickest reload time for any battleship in the game with this caliber of guns. And if you want to use the main battery reload mod, you can get these guns reloading in under 20 seconds, really giving it a cruiser kind of reload to go with its battle cruiser moniker. Although personally, I think I'm going to keep the secondary mod installed because the main gun reload mod does decrease the turret traverse time, or rather increases it, makes it slower, and that's not necessarily something you want to deal with in these battle cruisers, especially in close range engagements like this. But the German battlecruisers also come with a unique gimmick that I didn't mention in my preview video of them from a week or two ago, and still haven't mentioned in this commentary yet, and that is the last turret on the stern of the ship is capable of rotating 360 degrees, which, if you are ever pushing in toward an enemy ship, that means you can put most of your firepower from one side of the ship to the other without too much effort being involved on your part at all. And while I have said that you ideally want to be kiting away from the big guns as your secondaries do the talking like they are against this Amagi, there are situations where you do want to push in against things like other battleships. Certainly, if you can guarantee a 1v1 fight with another Tier 7 battleship, and you don't point your bow directly to them, but instead angle your side armor at their guns so that you can actually ricochet their shells, well then the Zieten is perfectly capable of brawling one-on-one with pretty much any battleship it could come across, and it does carry torpedoes on either side of the ship, which, of course, in brawling situations are always a nice trump card. The torpedoes aren't quick, but if you're going to push into an enemy battleship the same way you would in something like a Tirpitz or Odin or Scharnhorst, well, it doesn't really matter how quick the torpedoes are at those kind of ranges. But you can see here, the results of the Zieten are pretty good. 183,000 damage done, high caliber metal, Confederate metal, 265 secondary hits, and 7 fires. The ship certainly has a lot of firepower, but you're going to need to utilize all of its weapons in order to get the most out of it. You absolutely want to utilize the secondaries, you absolutely want to utilize the main guns, and whenever you can, you want to utilize the torpedoes. But you cannot treat this like a conventional battleship or like a mainline German battleship. It simply does not have the armor protection to push in against multiple targets and stay alive. Kiting in these ships is going to be of supreme value to you. You're going to want to keep yourself safe, you're going to need to take smart engagements, and you're going to have to practice excellent map awareness to avoid crossfires because you do not have the turtleback protection to save you if you mess up. I'd say the skill floor for this line of battleships is probably higher than any of the others in this game. These are not going to be super easy for newer players to get the hang of, but I think the best advice I can give you is treat these much more like not very maneuverable heavy cruisers. They don't have the armor to brawl with multiple targets. They do have the armor to protect themselves, but the only way to protect yourself is to exercise good positioning, and it's always a good idea to have an escape route. That is, point your bow away from the threat and sail away from it as they push into you. That is how you're going to have the most success with this line of German battleships, and this line excels at doing just that with its secondaries and its pretty potent main guns and torpedoes. 194,000 damage done, playing this ship the way I think it's meant to be played. Hopefully that helps you. If so, give the video a thumbs up, consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.